In the shadowy corners of Gotham City, some of the greatest battles are fought behind closed doors. Take the story of Kirk and Francine Langstrom. It's a tale of monsters and mutations, yes, but also of the human cost of obsession, addiction, and trauma. Kirk's descent into the Man-Bat serum reflects the thrill and danger of addiction, a desire to escape or transform that ultimately consumes him. But the true damage isn't his alone. Spouses and families often bear the weight of addiction, living in fear and uncertainty, patching up the consequences and hoping that love will be enough to keep the pieces together. Francine's journey shows us how love and loyalty are tested to the breaking point, how trauma can take root without warning, and how the mistakes of one person, no matter how well-intentioned, can ripple through the lives of those closest to them. But before I talk about how Batman the Animated Series adapted these characters, it's important to look back at the comic book source material. Francine Langstrom made her first appearance in Detective Comics number 402, published in 1970. Note that in her earliest appearances before her marriage, her name was Francine Lee. Her primary role was to act as the worried partner that cooperated with Batman to find out what had happened to her missing fiancé, Kirk. This first version of Man-Bat came about because Kirk Langstrom wanted to give himself powers to rival Batman. This was later retconned to Kirk trying to cure deafness to make him a more tragic figure. But by injecting himself with his serum derived from bats, Langstrom became the Man-Bat. Horrified by his appearance, he went into hiding while trying to find a cure. But as the change progressed, the beast inside started to take over. He grew to like what he had become, and he wanted to share his gift with his bride-to-be. There's a pretty memorable scene from Detective Comics number 407, where Batman dramatically interrupts the marriage of Kirk and Francine. They may look like a happy, normal couple, but Batman knows that Kirk is really a monster hiding beneath a rubber mask. What he didn't know is that so was Francine. She had willingly become a Man-Bat, or She-Bat as they'd go on to call her, to be with her beloved. Batman knows that they're not thinking clearly, and so he forces them to take an antidote that he had created, returning them to normal. However, Batman's antidote was far from perfect. The beast within them would still want to come out, so Batman asked them to keep vials of the antidote close by at all times, just in case. Much later on, Francine would revert to the She-Bat after getting bitten by a vampire bat while examining some caves in Las Vegas. Once she was cured, Francine and Kirk decided to move to Chicago to get away from the craziness of their lives in Gotham. However, this brought them to the attention of two separate sorcerers on two separate occasions who wanted to weaponize them. Francine was forced into becoming She-Bat again, and Kirk had to become Man-Bat to save her. This was the start of his transition to becoming a heroic member of the Bat family. Following this point, Francine's biggest role was becoming the mother of Rebecca Langstrom, who had a rare illness. When Man-Bat sourced a cure, Batman prevented him from using it, believing it to be poisoned. This turned Man-Bat against Batman and returned him to his status as a wild enemy. And that's basically where the characters were by the early 1990s when Batman the Animated Series went into production. With all this convoluted comic history, the creators of Batman the Animated Series chose a simpler, more emotionally grounded approach to the Langstroms. Their take on Kirk Langstrom, as seen in the first produced episode, On Leather Wings, was closer to the original comic book take. He was an addict, he didn't have noble motivations, he just enjoyed the thrill of becoming Man-Bat and of losing himself to the night. And his family were aware of what he was doing, but they didn't do anything to stop it. Here, Francine and her father, Dr. March, are researchers at Gotham Zoo alongside Kirk. They cover up for him, telling Bruce Wayne that the recording he found of the Man-Bat attacking a guard at a chemical plant is the sound of brown bats fighting with starlings over territory. But I think an important point to make is that they hadn't seen him as Man-Bat. They effectively buried their heads in the sand over it. This is demonstrated by the fact that when Batman confronts Langstrom at his lab, and Francine walks in on their fight, she recognizes Kirk immediately and is horrified by what he had become. This moment is a window into the burden Kirk's addiction places on those closest to him. Spouses like Francine often bear the invisible weight of uncertainty and fear, struggling to reconcile love with the unpredictable reality of the addict's behavior. Many partners end up in a caretaker role, constantly worried, exhausted, and hoping that love alone can steady things. But this constant vigilance can leave the spouse anxious, drained, and often ashamed that their lives no longer feel like their own. For Francine Langstrom, this pattern is written all over on Leather Wings. Like many spouses of addicts, she tries to rationalise and minimise the problem, covering up his actions in the hope that things will steady themselves. Yet, when she's finally confronted with the truth, when she sees Kirk fully transformed, her horror isn't just at the physical monstrosity before her, it's at the realisation of how far he's gone. Her reaction mirrors the moment many partners of Addicts face, that shattering instant where denial collapses and the scale of the problem can no longer be hidden. She still clearly loves him though, given that she comes running out to greet Batman when he brings a cured Kirk back to the zoo. On Leatherwings ends on a positive note with Batman carrying Kirk to Francine, hoping that this is the end of the Man-Bat. But peace is fleeting for the Langstroms. In the episode Terror in the Sky, the danger returns. This time not through Kirk's choice, but through forces beyond his control, putting Francine at the centre of a new, more insidious threat. When the Man-Bat seems to have returned, both Batman and Francine conclude that Kirk is up to his old tricks, but he's adamant that he hasn't taken the formula again. He argues that Batman's cure must have failed, which Batman denies. Francine's trust in her husband is completely destroyed, however, as she screams that she's sick of the lies, she's sick of her life, and she's sick of him. In reality, Dr. March had picked up where Kirk had left off. He believed that the human-bat hybrid is the only creature that could survive the inevitable upcoming apocalypse, and so he tries to perfect the formula. He was caught off guard by Francine arriving for work. In his shock, he dropped the formula, smashing the beaker. Francine helped tidy up the mess, but a cut from the broken glass exposed her to the formula. Francine's transformation into the she-bat carries a very different weight than Kirk's. Where his story was one of addiction and self-destruction, hers plays out more like a metaphor for trauma. She doesn't know she's been infected. She doesn't realise she's the one becoming the monster. That lack of awareness mirrors the way trauma and PTSD can live beneath the surface, reshaping someone's life without them even realising it. When Francine changes, she blacks out, she loses time, and the violent actions of the she-bat feel like they belong to someone else. Many survivors of trauma describe that same alienation, the sense that something dark and destructive has taken root inside them, erupting without their consent. And when the truth finally comes out, Francine's horror isn't just at the wings and the claws, it's at the realisation that she is capable of something she never thought possible. In this way, the she-bat becomes a symbol of the hidden scars that trauma leaves behind. It isn't something she chooses, but something inflicted upon her, and now she has to live with the knowledge that it's a part of her. That's what makes Francine such a sad figure. She embodies the way trauma can turn the familiar self into something frightening and unrecognisable, even to the people who love us most. But Francine isn't the only one undone by the serum. Her father's obsession with it and its potential for progress comes crashing down when he realises the harm it has caused his daughter. If Kirk's story is of addiction and Francine's is of trauma, then March's is of obsession. Kirk willingly embraced the serum, chasing the thrill of transformation even as it consumed him. March, on the other hand, dedicated his entire life to the pursuit of knowledge, convinced that his research was a force for progress. But in Terror in the Sky, that lifetime of work collapses in a single moment of realisation he had poisoned his own daughter. As an abstract concept, the Man-Bat was supposed to be a way of saving humanity, but seeing his work in action, March is distraught. When March burns his research, it's a sorrowful admission that he has wasted his life and doomed his family. This is the man's legacy, the work that defined him, now reduced to ashes because it did more harm than good. Earlier in On Leather Wings, he came across as clinical, detached, complicit, and maybe even a little insane. But here he's broken, stripped of that arrogance, and ashamed. Ultimately, the thing that heals the Langstroms' relationship is the truth. Francine had booked a flight out of Gotham, but when Kirk gets test results back confirming that he is not the new Man-Bat, he boards the flight to get his wife back. And this is when the new Man-Bat's identity is revealed as Francine transforms on the flight thousands of feet in the air. She breaks out of the plane, endangering everyone's life, but makes a point of saving Kirk, leaving Batman to save everyone else. This culminates in a battle on top of a bridge where Batman doses her with antidotes, and she almost falls to her death. Kirk dramatically catches her, telling her he almost lost her before, but he won't let go again. It's a blunt metaphor, sure, but ultimately a happy ending for the pair. It's just a shame that the tie-in comics brought the Man-Bat back. Initially, Kirk was transformed against his will, and seemingly killed in an explosion. In reality, he fled, deciding to live in the caves outside of Gotham, leaving his humanity behind. He'd eventually wind up back with Francine, and it was never really explained what happened there. I guess he just changed his mind. But in Batman The Adventures Continue Season 3, written by Paul Dini and Alan Burnett, we see that Kirk has given in to his addiction once more. Francine gives up on him and packs her bags. It was an abrupt end to a rocky relationship that seemed to have gotten stronger thanks to their shared experience. Now, before anyone chimes in and says I forgot about the Batman Beyond 2.0 comics, where it is revealed that Francine Langstrom had died of cancer, note that these comics came out about a decade after Batman Beyond ended and none of the show's creative team were involved. It's fine to read them and enjoy them, but they're not part of the same continuity. But that aside, the Langstrom story, whether in the comics or in Batman the Animated Series, is at its core a family tragedy. Addiction, trauma and obsession don't exist in isolation. They ripple outwards, catching loved ones in their undertow. Kirk loses himself in the thrill of transformation, March accidentally sacrifices his family to the altar of progress, and Francine suffers the consequences of both, her own life twisted into something unrecognisable. Each of them illustrates how destructive choices made in the pursuit of escape, knowledge, or even love can scar the people closest to us. And yet there are still flashes of hope. Francine's forgiveness, Kirk's desperate attempts to hold on to his wife, even March's final act of destroying his work remind us all that while addiction and trauma can shatter lives, they don't erase the capacity for love, truth, and redemption. If Kirk's story is the addict's downfall, Francine is the story of those left in the wake, living with stress, fear, and uncertainty every day. Terror in the Sky shows that addiction doesn't end at the individual, it spreads, corroding families and leaving those who care most to carry the heaviest burden. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time. I'll be back on Monday to revisit one of my favourite characters from the overlooked film Justice League: Gods and Monsters. I want to talk about their version of Wonder Woman, the renegade new god, Becca. And next Friday, it'll be time to revisit another misunderstood monster from Batman the Animated Series, Professor Dorian's genetically engineered ultimate life form, Tigress. Hope to see you then.